This script allows a scene to load when a player character runs into the object the script is attached to, in this case the door. However, it's not very flexible. I want to be able to reuse my code in various places. For instance, I'd like to be able to put this script onto any door to load any scene, or really any object to load any scene. I already can drag this same script and attach it to any object I want. The problem is it's always going to load scene 1 because that is the parameter that I sent the load scene method. Let's change this so that any scene can be used. To do this, I'm going to use variables or properties. In this case, I want a public property that is of type string and has a name of target. You could name it anything you want, but to me this will be the target scene. What am I going to load? And I'm going to go ahead and initialize it right now, meaning give it a value using the single equal sign. That is the assignment operator. And I'm going to assign it the value of scene 01. End the command with a semicolon. And now I basically have a variable which holds some data or some information in memory, and I can use that variable whenever I want. For instance, down here, instead of using the literal string scene01, I can use the variable target, which is a string and has the value of scene01. If I save this to test it out and run it, when I run into the door, it loads the scene. It loads scene 01, in fact. So the variable's working. The reason I made it public was so that I do not need to give it a value here. If I do give it a value, that's okay, but it can be overwritten anyway. And I'll show you where that can happen. I'm going to save this now. So now I've declared a variable, but I have not given it a value. It is public though, which means if I go back to Unity and I click on the doorway or whatever object that script is attached to, I can see the variable right there, target. Unity will capitalize the variable name there, even though in our code it's not capitalized. It says scene01 here because it remembered what it was previously. But if I were to remove this load scene script and reattach it, you'll see it starts out blank because I did not give it a default value this time. And I can type in whatever I want to type in. This is powerful because now I can attach this script to any object in any scene and type in whichever target I want. I can use one script for many different scene loads. If I save this and run it just to make sure it's working, hit the door, it loads the scene. We want to make sure that this door, when I hit it, will also load back the other scene. Before we do that, let's go ahead and delete this ball. And in my code, I'm going to just go ahead and delete this comment. I frequently clean up my code all the time. I don't just get it working and then forget about it. I think of, are there ways it can be written differently so that it's more readable or so that it's more efficient? So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to Unity. We know that that script is already working with this door. So I'm going to make sure and press Ctrl S to save scene 02. And then I'm going to go back to scene 01. There's my scene 1. If I double click the warehouse, and there is the door that I want to be able to go into. And here is my FPS controller. For now, let's just put that close to the door so that when this scene loads, I start right outside the door. So it makes me feel like I just came out of that doorway. I need to attach that script to this door. Let's see how it's set up. If I click on the warehouse, I've got this large object. It doesn't have parts to it. It doesn't have a little drop down and have different pieces. It does have a collider attached to it, but that collider is large. It's covering the entire thing. It's actually got more than one collider. It's got that collider in the back that we added. But we don't want a scene to load when we hit those colliders. So while I could add another collider here for the door, we wouldn't know which collider it was dealing with when we were adding the script. So what I'm going to do is add a game object here for the door. I'm going to right click on the warehouse and say 3D object cube. Notice the cube is a child of the warehouse. If I were to zoom into it, it's huge. So I'm going to scale this and move it so that it's right in front of the door. It's basically going to be the area when I hit that space, it's going to load the scene. It doesn't have to be right on the door. It could be in front of the door, which is what I'm doing. Alright, that looks pretty good. It does have a collider. It is not a trigger yet, so make sure to check that on. And then we can add the script. This time, the target is going to be scene 02. I did start very close there. I also started facing the door, and I think I want to face the other way so that when I'm in scene 2 and I load scene 1, it's as if I just came through the door, not walking through it backwards. Let's see if I run into the door here. Nothing is happening. So we have an issue. We're not getting any errors, so we're going to have to think about this one for a moment. But I'm going to press escape and hit stop. My guess is that we're actually not hitting that door. If I were to look at this from another point of view, right there you see how far the door is sticking out. If I click on the warehouse now, you see that the collider for the warehouse is actually sticking out a hair further. I'm actually just being stopped by the warehouse. I'm colliding with that and never really hitting the door. All I need to do is take the cube and pull it out a little bit so that it's sticking out further than the warehouse is. If I click on warehouse now, it's pretty clear that the door is sticking out further. I'm going to also rotate myself so I'm not facing the door to begin with. There, it looks like I'm facing outward now. Outside of the door, looking away. If I turn around, there's the door, and if I run into it, it does load the new scene. If I turn back here and hit this door, we're back here again. Obviously, we don't want that large gray box there. First, let's name this a little better. I'm going to call it door. It is a child of the warehouse, so I already know it belongs to the warehouse. I don't have to tell it which door it is. And if I click on door, I see over here that I have a mesh renderer. I can just uncheck that. Now you don't see the mesh. Or, in this case, I don't need to ever see it. I'm going to hit the drop down and say remove component. I can also do that with a mesh filter, remove component, so that all I really have now is a transform that every game object has, a box collider, which is a trigger, and a load scene script. If I run this, I don't see the collider there, but it is there. If I run into it, it loads the scene.